Ya Palingana, this is our place. Our ancestors have been here since the beginning of time. We come from this country. We are a part of it, not outside of it. Our responsibility is to maintain the balance of relational ecosystems that we all live in. We are country, seas and waterways. Some call me water. Nearly all need me. I touch everything, connecting the inanimate with living things that without me would not be. For in all of the arteries and all of the veins, I am the flow of life. We are country. Country is us.
Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Rob Blanford and I lead alumni relations at the university. It's really good to see you all here today. So, who put your hand up if you haven't been to the Hedberg before? I have been, but I'm going to put everyone's been to the Hedberg before. Welcome to the Hedberg. This is the home of music and media studies at the university. So today we have a great event for you featuring VIP alumna Michelle Cooling. She's smiling. We think you're very important, Michelle, so thank you for being here. A little bit about the building before we proceed. If we have a fire alarm during the event, which we hope we won't, please follow one of the green exit signs slowly and carefully out of the building and get well away from the windows. If you need to use the bathroom during the event, please proceed through that door at the back, turn right, and there are toilets on the ground floor through the double doors. Okay, so today we have for you an in-conversation between Michelle Cooling, our VIP alumna, and Professor Alana Mann, who is the head of media at the university. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Alana before we go on. So Alana is a professor and head of the media discipline at the University of Tasmania. Her professional career prior to becoming an academic includes 7 years in marketing communications at Fairfax Media. She's been publisher of the Sydney Morning Herald and at The Age. A Queenslander and therefore an avid rugby league fan, she nevertheless counts herself as a Swans supporter, which might have to change now we have a team in Tasmania. There we go. Please, I'll hand over to Alana.
Thank you and welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to be here on this very special occasion because we so enjoy having our alumni come back and talk about how they've reached such incredible achievements, and Michelle is certainly a case in point in that regard. So it's wonderful for you to all be here, and I will just reassure you, if you haven't been able to bring everyone who wanted to come today, we are actually recording and going to provide our version of this talk online, so you'll be able to watch again. So thank you. You gave me a bit of a promotion, Rob, because I wasn't publisher of the Sydney Morning Herald. If that would have been lovely, but no, I was a much less highfalutin marketing manager, in fact, and that has made me really intrigued about knowing more about Michelle's world, because I also spent a lot of time in Sydney while I had that job. It's a wonderful place, but it's also a bit of a crazy place to work, and I think that working for the Swans would be the pinnacle of sporting life as well in terms of the energy and activity, and I'm just really excited to hear from her about that. So I'll give her a formal introduction before we invite her up to the stage. So Michelle Cooling is a Herbartian. She completed her Bachelor of Arts degree majoring in journalism, media and communications and sociology in 2009. And she's now thriving in social media and communications And I find this a really interesting conversation because even though I worked in the media a much longer time ago than Michelle did, we were actually discussing the change in technology even since she has assumed her role. So it's a very interesting position that you're in as still a very young person, adapting constantly to new media technology. So very interested to hear about that. Her role is actually manager of social media and publicity for the Sydney Swans, but she's also had various roles in other organisations, including Cricket Australia, Cricket Tasmania, the Hobart Hurricanes, and Durham County Cricket Club in England. So there's definitely a sporting vibe going on here. So please join me in welcoming Michelle Cooling to the stage.
This one? Yep. Thanks for that introduction, and it's really great to be here. Some familiar faces out there too, so thank you for having me.
You're so welcome, and you're also a sports person yourself.
Yes.
You got to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I've got a hockey background. I've got some familiar hockey mums here, which is really nice to see some of the kids that I used to coach, which makes me feel very old, so not so young, what you were just saying before. But yeah, I guess that's probably where my love of sport comes from. I've always been into kind of all sports. I've grown up playing hockey since I was 11, played National League up till National League level for Tassie for 8 or 9 years. Played over in England, which is kind of where I got my job over at Durham with cricket over there as well, while I was playing hockey over there. So that worked out really well. I was brought up in a household, I guess, that was very sports oriented. My dad was involved in local cricket, so that's probably where I was very, I guess, made dad proud with my my first job was in cricket, so he enjoyed that. Probably doesn't enjoy it as much as a Mad Geelong supporter now that I'm at the Swans, but I think he's learned to love that. But yeah, I've always kind of had sport in my veins, so to have worked at some of those organisations and at the Swans now, I'm really happy.
And so that's your sporting heritage. That explains that passion. How did you get interested in media?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. We were kind of talking about it yesterday, and it's always interesting when it's something you don't really think about too much. You go to work every day, you do the same thing, but it's kind of nice to sit back and reflect. So to my point before, I was always really interested in sport, and throughout school and my year 11 and 12, all my subjects were tailored to wanting to be a PE teacher. That's what I wanted to be. I did a lot of hockey coaching. I really enjoyed that. I just always wanted to be a PE teacher. I started my relationship with UTAS started when I started a human movement degree. That degree was only offered in Launceston, so I used to trek up there, do my 3 days up there, come back. I was doing high level hockey, so I needed to be in Hobart for a lot of that training. As I mentioned to you yesterday, the course wasn't too specialised until third year, so I was doing subjects like chemistry, biology, which it was a bit of it was challenging as someone, as you'll find out, is quite a creative-minded person. I was doing it because I wanted to get to that third year where I could specialise in PE teaching. But I just got to a point where I was like, I don't think this is for me. I think if I continue doing hockey coaching, that'll tick that box of being able to help people and use my skills in that area. And then journalism was always my backup option, I guess, but I never wanted to be a journalist as such. Nothing against, I say this all the time, and I did a TikTok video because I get asked a lot of questions about my career all the time, and I've got a lot of good friends that are journalists, and I've worked with many journalists, and you've been a journalist, so I have nothing against journalists, but that's just not me. I'm more of a creative person in terms of creating content, marketing plans, that kind of stuff. And I didn't want to be a journalist. And back then, this was 2010, social media wasn't a massive thing. So I took a year off. Like I stopped uni up in Launceston, worked at Habitat. I don't know if anyone knows Habitat, but I think it's called Minimax now. But worked in retail the rest of the year, had to think about what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'm going to give journalism and media a crack the next year. So I did that. the Bachelor of Arts degree, obviously you get into your second and third year, and then you're specialising a bit more. So I thought that was really good because you could think of, study lots of different topics and really hone into what you wanted to do. And then I did my prac at Cricket Tasmania in my third year and discovered this whole world of PR where you could spin things to the way you wanted, and I was like, this is me. This is what I want to do. I don't want to be controversial. I don't want to write athletes off. I want to be in there. I want to work with them. So I discovered that I really wanted to do that, and was really lucky to enjoy my prac. Did some great subjects as well. I really enjoyed. I remember doing a feature writing course, and it's quite funny. I was thinking about that yesterday, actually. My major feature was on how much female coverage there was in mainstream media. And, 10 years on, you look at that and you're like, we've still got a fair way to go, but just looking at all the coverage of all the females that won gold medals over the last couple of weeks, it's definitely a changing landscape, which is really nice to see. But yeah, so I did my prac at Cricket Tas and really liked it. This is what I want to do, and then graduated and had to find a job.
Yeah. It's great to hear your journey, because everyone's journey is so different, isn't it? And careers take all sorts of windy paths, and I think that's a really important thing to remember. You sometimes start out thinking that you're going to end up somewhere, and things happen along the way. Can you identify one or two key moments that sort of took you to your current role in terms of, things that really you worked hard for, but other things that might have just happened?
Yeah, so I guess, the first one was probably just changing degrees altogether, knowing that wasn't right for me, and it's all worked out well now, but it's probably worth noting that I haven't just landed at the Swans. Like, I've applied for a lot of football jobs before I got the job at the Swans, and that was nothing, there was the feedback I got, there was nothing wrong with me. It was just that someone else might have done that little bit more in terms of football writing and things like that. But I guess if you go back even further, like that year that I was working in retail and I was looking for media jobs, mainly in Tasmania, but cricket was kind of the only sport. We've obviously got the Jack Jumpers now, and I'm sure that's offered opened a lot of pathways for local sports people that want to work in sport. But yeah, so then I had to keep my options open if I wanted to move to the mainland as well. A job came up at a corporate communications firm, and I got offered that job, and they kind of looked after the Tasmanian Institute of Sport. So I thought, well, that at least I'm still be doing sports things. But that same week, I then got offered a unpaid job at Cricket Australia for 4 months over the summer, working the Ashes series. So I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do, but that one's going to pay me, and I don't have to move states. But I took the cricket one, of course. So took that, did that. And then they got me back the next summer as well. So I was still in between all that, still trying to find a job, doing hockey coaching on the side. Trying to find a media job. Obviously was very lucky that I had a retail job and was coaching hockey as well. And then, the next summer rolled around, I did the same thing at Cricket Australia. It was a paid opportunity that time. And it just reaffirmed that this is what I want to do. And as I said, I feel like there's a lot more opportunities for people now because social media is such a major part of every brand and organisation's marketing strategy, where 10 years ago it was such a small part. So you kind of had to use all those all-round skills a lot more.
You're very brave, because I think that, when people do get presented with a possibility of getting a full-time job, and we do take it because you have to pay the rent. Yeah. It's hard to step out of that once you've taken it. So you took a risk at an important time, and it paid off, as you say.
But saying it now, I probably shouldn't have. Not shouldn't have. But you look back and you're like, oh yeah, actually. But I just felt like that was really going to open the windows and the doors, and it did, which was really good. And probably just the other point around turning points was probably my job at the Swans now. I'd worked my way up at Cricket Tasmania. I'd been there 7 years. I've gone from an officer to a coordinator to a manager. I'd done a variety of things from media management, digital marketing, social media, and learnt so many different things there. But I just really wanted to I wanted to step up, but I also just wanted something different. And for me, I see AFL and AFL teams as kind of the pinnacle in sport. That's just how I see it. And I really wanted to work in football. And the Swans job that I took was a social media coordinator job. So I kind of had to take a step back to go forward, which it was still obviously the salary and all that was good. But I've never been like a title chaser, and I never really will. Like, I just like to enjoy my job. But I think that was probably another little risk, being like, oh, I've got all these credits here. I could probably really step it up again in the next few years. But I just really want to get into football. And it's funny because my current boss is the boss who did my interview, and they actually didn't pick me in the first round because they thought I was too overqualified and I would get bored. And then no one else stood out to them. So they made a really awkward phone call to me to be like, can we interview you? They interviewed me when I happened to be actually doing a weekend with Cricket Australia, and they offered me the job 2 hours later. So
wow, that's another good insight for them.
Yeah.
So in terms of, you mentioned before that you've gone through those different roles, which has enabled you to pick up all of that experience, knowledge and skills of the broader organisation, which is really fascinating. And I've just wondered how that knowledge has helped you to stay up to date in terms of your own media skills, knowing that the landscape's changed so much. How have you worked with other people, and how do you work as a team? Because I imagine it's not all on you to keep up to date with everything and be able to do everything.
No, and like, we've got a 10-person media team at the Swans, which is, when I started at Cricket Tas, there was 2 of us that did that. And I really credit having to do a lot at Cricket Tas. Like, I see Andy here. Andy came in and did some video stuff with us a couple of years at the Hurricanes, where me, who'd never really been properly training cameras, was having to do hype videos and do all our video coverage because there was no one else, and they package these jobs up that you're kind of an all-in-one person. And I think that has really helped me now. And like we were talking yesterday, COVID's probably was a turning point where I kind of realised all those years at Cricket Tas, all those different jobs I did, all those skills that I built up, from event management to video editing to being able to write for different things to stakeholder relationships, like all that kind of stuff helped me, because we had a 10-person media team in 2020 and that got cut down to 3 when COVID struck, because obviously we weren't sure what was going to happen. My GM kept her job, I kept my job, and our other content manager kept our job. And I still just think we kept our jobs because I could just do so many different things. We eventually brought our video person back on when we started playing again, and then we got shipped into hubs, and that's a completely other story, which if anyone wants to hear about the COVID hub experience, I'm more than happy to dive into that. But those skill sets are what kind of, I had friends that lost their jobs, and you kind of feel a bit guilty that they might have, like, people that were there longer than me, but it is those skill sets that really help. And it's an ever-changing landscape. Like, I now kind of look after TikTok strategy at the Swans, and I just joke that, I'm a millennial trying to be a Gen Z with TikTok strategy. And we have Gen Zs in our team, but that's the way marketing's going, and content's very different to what it was even 2 or 3 years ago. So you just having to like immerse yourself in it, really. Like, that's one thing I just say to people, like, you just have to be on it.
Just dive in,
yeah.
hey?
Yeah.
Now, COVID was one big obstacle that we all faced to varying degrees, but can you tell us a bit, you're working in a world where you've got a lot happening, a lot of high profile, very popular sports people who often are in public. You're managing reputation of the club, you're helping them to understand how to work with the media. I'm not steering you towards any of those particular challenges you've had, but more broadly, what sorts of problems have you had to deal with in your role, and how has your training and education helped you deal with them?
I'm not, and I won't just put my PR hat on and say that our players are perfect, but I really haven't had many kind of major issues, which is very lucky, and it probably just speaks more to the culture and that at the club and the expectations. A lot of clubs are probably the same. I can only speak for the football club I work for. COVID was one of those weird times because 90% of the time players are really focused on football, and they do worry about how they're perceived in public, even with doing things for us for social media. But then I feel like the last few years, the tide's kind of turned a little bit in terms of their own brands and how they want to be perceived on their own channels. And so they're a little bit more, it's just a generational thing. I think when I first started, it was kind of like, well, no, let's not put this on social media. Now even like John Longmire, the coach, be like, oh, do you want to mic me up while I say this speech? And like, they're a lot more receptive because that's just the world we live in. But in terms of, I guess, players being receptive to things, it's funny because they don't say no to much, but once the season stopped, it's like they were all just bored, and it was like, what can we do, Michelle? What can we do to, do you want me to do daily vlogs? Do you want me to send them to you? And I'm like, who are these people? You take football away from them and they've suddenly realised that there's so many other things going on in the world. But yeah, it was very interesting. Like once we get shipped into the hubs, and that was just a crazy experience. And we did it in 2020 and 2021, and I've spoken to a few different podcasts and things about it because people get really interested by it. It's not as glamorous, I guess, as people think. Again, the whole time I was just thinking how lucky I was to still have a job. So I've said a few times to people, I kind of became Michelle that works at the Swans, and that's all I was for those months, because you were literally in this environment. You couldn't escape it all the time. So you kind of lost any other sense of who you were, and it was a hard time with like burnout and things like that, but it kind of taught me a lot. But in terms of crisis, we had one incident with a player who's no longer on our list. We were under like strict WA quarantine isolation in our hotel, and he decided to bring his girlfriend in. And this was when my GM had got pregnant and she wasn't in the hub, so I was kind of managing that. So I just remember my phone ringing at like 11 o'clock with our head of player wellbeing being like, this has happened, how do we manage this? Because then we had Channel 7 cameras camped outside the resort and all that. So there's always, that's probably like been the biggest thing. We very lucky we don't have a lot of like major issue. Like I've never had to deal with anything with like drugs or alcohol or anything like that, which is, as I said, it probably speaks to the culture at the club, which is really good. But yeah, there's often little things, I guess, with sponsors and sponsorships and making sure our players are doing the right thing, like that. But yeah, we haven't had to. I'm trying to see if there's anything juicy I can give you. But
well, maybe you can also take a little bit of credit for that, because I think the communications people, we play a very important role inside the organisation too, in sort of managing up and making people understand what reflects well and what doesn't, and what to avoid, and how do we actually train our employees and staff so that they're our best ambassadors. So you're clearly working well as an organisation, and you must be playing a big role in that. Do you get players asking you how to deal with media questions, or do you have formal training sessions about media?
Yeah, we do a little bit. I have taken a bit of a step back from the media side of things. I kind of took that on over COVID, and now we've got other media staff. So it's probably, we do media training with all the players. I think it's finding that balance of the ones that don't do a lot, just being able to speak properly and confidently, because it doesn't come to everyone naturally. You can't just expect to throw players in and know the right things to say, and even experienced players in tough situations, you're not going to know what to say. But I think probably one thing that is one of my strengths, and it's just developing relationships with athletes. It's something that I've always, I don't know, because I've been in a sports environment, but so they feel comfortable. Like I have players coming up being like, can you help me with my social media? And that kind of makes me feel good in a way that they want my help in their brand. Like that's how they will convey themselves to a mass audience. So, I've sat down with like plenty of players over the years and really helped them, which is really pleasing for me, but also hopefully a reflection of the relationships I've built. Like people always used to joke and say, oh, I haven't spoken to Buddy like Lance Franklin yet. Can get Shell to do it. He'll say yes to Shell. So I used to think, I was like, no, he won't. If he doesn't want to do it, he's not going to say yes to me. But it's a bit of a reflection that it's a relationship thing. And I often think, well, yeah, just if you work at these relationships, like it will work in your favour at some point.
It sounds like a big family, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you're never really off call.
Nope.
Which is something that comes with that public relations role,
Yeah.
really, isn't it? What's a day in your life look like?
Well, there's a lot going on at the moment. I feel like it just doesn't really stop, and we've obviously had a really good year. Friday night was a good win, but up the last few weeks they've hit a bit of a hurdle. So when you're with a team and they're flying and they're going so well, like, it's great. You forget about, especially with social, you can post whatever you want. It's all good. Everyone's happy. You hit some losses, like one loss, a loss is a loss, but when you back-to-back losses and there seems to be things going on in terms of the fans think there's something going on. People kept saying to me, what's going on with the team? I'm like there's nothing. That's just form. Like, that's just the football season, unfortunately. But yeah, it's always busy. We obviously have the AFL team. We've got the women's team starting in 2 weeks as well, which is really exciting. It's the women's side of things is something I've really enjoyed. When I started at the Swans, we had a youth girls academy, and we finally got a team 2 years ago. There was a lot of, media narrative around why it took the Swans so long to get a women's team. Our old CEO always said, though, when we do it, we want to do it well. And so we recently moved into a brand new, incredible facility at Moore Park, and the girls now have exactly the same facilities as the guys. It's kind of like the benchmark of how female athletes should be treated in line with the male counterparts. So we have the women's team going as well. We also have a foundation and an academy. We hire out Swans HQ as well. So I was saying to you yesterday, it's like a casino. It literally never sleeps, that place. To be able to pay for what was built there, we hire it out. So we have a lot of corporate offsites. And my job, it's funny, like some days I'll be doing a lot of content and social media, then other days I'll be chasing the most random of things off players. And even last week I was doing a submission for one of our players for the Jim Steins Award, which is the big community leadership award. So that's something that I look after as well, our community side of things at the Swans. So it kind of varies. Our media team, we look after a lot of different things. My favourite thing to do, is be given an idea and how can we bring this idea to life in terms of content and social, and working with the talent, the players. If we don't have the players, I think that's probably been the challenge the last couple of weeks, where you're like, let's just let the players focus on football a bit more. Then that gives you an extra challenge to be able to come up with some content and that's creative and engaging in a way that people will enjoy it.
Great. And knowing that we've got a lot of students, some of whom are in the audience, but many of whom are going to come back and watch this presentation, have you got any hot tips for people who are studying a BA with a major in media or a media and communications degree? Have you got any advice for them in terms of what to take advantage of at this really important time when you're thinking about a career?
Yeah, I think and it's hard when you want to get, you see your end goal, I'm sure when I started, of course I wanted to work in sport. I wanted a really good job at a sports team or a sports club. And it's hard initially. I remember being so nervous at my first day at Cricket Tas. But I think you just have to make the most of the opportunities, and everyone's personalities are different. I might come up here and seem really confident and outgoing and that. I'm not the most outgoing, sure of myself person, but you just put yourself in these situations where if you're enjoying what you're doing, then it's really easy to convey that to other people as well. And as a student, I guess you don't have to say yes to everything, because you want to, as I said, I said no to a job, right? So I don't want to come up here and say yes to everything. But I think, especially when you're studying, I found that just studying an array of different things, and you'll find your niche, you'll find what you want to do, but also don't go too far into a niche so that you might want to pivot, you might want to change in a couple of years. And a lot of media jobs, they really take in how many different skills you have, if you can write, if you can edit, if you're confident in interviewing people, things like that. And I think the good thing about Tassie now, and I mean, this building's a great example of how much things have changed since I graduated, but I was really lucky that I wanted to work in sport, and Cricket Tasmania provide this opportunity. So I was like, the door was open. And I was saying yesterday to you that a lot of people in my graduating class, there's about 5 or 6 of them now that work at ABC. They didn't all just start there, but a few of those people did do their prac at ABC, and they've kind of made their way up as well. So I think the good thing is, if you're studying in Tassie as well, there's going to be more opportunities down here, but don't, like I was 29 when I moved to Sydney, so it wasn't, I know a lot of people, I've probably done it the reverse to a lot of other people. They kind of, if you're from Tassie, they get out and study and then they might come back later, but I've probably done it the reverse way. So hopefully I'm a good case study to show that you can do it, do it that way as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and you've managed to retain your lovely humility and your understanding of, and your gratefulness.
Yeah,
that really comes
Sydney
out.
egos haven't got to me just yet.
No, exactly. Look out for that. Well, you're probably surrounded by them. And
they're all right.
look, it's fabulous to hear from you, Michelle. We could talk all day, but we want to ask the audience for their questions. And I'm going to run a microphone around. So if anyone does have a question, please put your hand up. I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have things they'd like to know about this career. Maybe some of you actually want to get into sport.
Oh, lights. You can see
Oh,
everyone now.
Thank you, Greg.
I had a question for Michelle on content release schedules. How do you, I guess, structure those as to not kind of oversaturate your brand?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that I'm kind of always harping on as well. And at the Swans, we have a lot of commercial partners. So alongside all the cool, fun content that we want to do and informative content about the football team and everything else that's going on in the club, you add commercial content on which are part of commercial partners' contracts, in the way that we have to deliver a certain amount of content per contract. So for Volkswagen, for realestate.com, for QBE, I could name another Channel 7, like another 10 partners. So we have a really good team. So as I was saying before, there's a team of 10 of us. So we have we have a new video person this week. So we have 3 video people now. We have 2 graphic designers. We have a specific content manager, a commercial content producer, and a content coordinator, and me, who kind of helps with a little bit of everything. I am publicity, but content is still my ballpark. So I do help out a lot with social media. We have a kind of shared doc where we have from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night, and we put all the content that we need to get out every day. I should have brought my computer and shown a screen of it, but I'm more than happy to show you a screenshot or whatever after this. And it can get a lot. Like, I remember grand final week 2022, and I was like, there aren't enough cells in this spreadsheet for how much content we need to get out. But it's a good way. Like, it's just a shared thing, because although most of us in our team are across everything, like, we're not always across everything. So person who I work next to, Andre, he might be working on a piece for Volkswagen. I might have no clue what that deliverable is, but if I look in that schedule, I'll see that it's going out at 3 o'clock. And I try and be across most things because of my PR head being like, is this the best outcome? But sometimes I can be a little bit too controlling, but because I've been there the longest, so there's a lot of times where I look at content, I'm like, oh, I know how the audience is going to react to that. And like, perfect example last week is when we got beaten by, I don't even know how much it was. It's already gone from my memory. We're back on track. We're on top of the ladder. It's all good. But we pulled a lot of our, goal of the week, mark of the week, stuff that's a regular content series, because we just knew what the comments would be like. And it's not often, you don't want to give in to the trolls and all that all the time, but as I was very lucky I wasn't at Adelaide for that game, because that would have been the worst game to be in the change rooms for. I was just like everyone else watching it on the couch, and I was like, I probably would have written that in the comments too. So no, obviously I wouldn't have, but it's that dealing with angry, emotional fans. And I kind of see it as the flip side, as that's how invested they are in the team and your brand, like where they're so invested that they're commenting like that. But you do have that flip side where you're like, that's how much they love this football club, because they really care. But yeah, from a content schedule point of view, sorry, I've kind of diverted a bit there. There's a lot going on, but we do just try and manage it through that one kind of shared doc. There's a lot of probably different platforms and things that people use. We've tried different things, but we find that Google Doc with all the timings, with everything in there, just really works well for our team. So that's how we do it.
I just wondered if there is any way that you can kind of control the messaging and the trolls as well around that kind of issue that you're talking about. And I'm also thinking a little bit about Ray Gun and the whole controversy, like in relation to your work, and you know how you would respond to that.
Well, geez, that's a tough one. Yeah, that's I mean, we put a lot of plans in place, and I'm often probably a bit. I always just think, how would John Longmire, so he's our coach, so how would John Longmire react? That's often something that will go through my head, like if he saw things, or from us posting point of view. But I think as well, like as someone who sits on the bus with players after a game and the first thing they do is look at their phones, like I often always think, what would it be like for them reading this comment? Like they're people, yes, they're highly paid athletes, and there's comments that they probably water off a duck's back, but there's especially the younger ones that can really have a lasting impact on people. I mean, I've been there where we've had players that have been like racially abused and like, you know, you should kill yourself and things like that in their DMs just for a football game. And I think that's to the point, like, yes, people are invested, but like you don't need to be personally attacking these guys. So I'm always like, I would be deleted. Like we have filters and that in place, but if there's something that my kind of strategy with trolls is people can have their opinion, but they can't personally attack people. And that's kind of how I monitor based on that. And I'm probably a bit more sensitive because I have the relationship with the players and that as well. But I think it's important to have that because like, and you can't stop every comment. Like there'll be times when someone will, oh, can you delete this? This is on there, because like after losses and things like that. But we are very lucky at Sydney that it's a pretty rare occurrence. Most people are pretty good most of the time, and bad losses like we had a couple of weeks ago, they don't happen very well. Like that was probably in my 8 years there, that's probably one of the worst ones, and after the grand final as well, things like that. But yeah, I kind of just go by that motto and just really try and look after the players because it's their well-being, like, and mental health such a big thing in sport as well. So in terms of the breakdancer, I don't know how I would have dealt with that. She seems to be, I saw today that her family had come out and spoke about it as well. So, but that's where it gets hard, right? Because to them, that's their daughter, that's that person. It's not just that person on TV that did a very different breakdance to everyone else. So I think it'd be interesting. I haven't seen her speak or anything yet after it. Her social media's obviously gone through the roof. So
she'll need a social media manager, won't she?
Yeah. But maybe I mean, they did a skit on, I think it was like Jimmy Fallon or something about it. And I was like, gosh, she's really made a lot of waves here. But it'd be, I think you have to think of the person to start with. Like I'm probably a bit like that. Like, of course, I probably had a laugh at it as well. And, you know, you saw all the Summer Heights High memes and all that around it. But the person that works with athletes is also like, oh, like she's done this for a reason. She hasn't just done it to be the butt of all jokes. Like there's obviously background to this dancing. She's obviously a good break dancer, but
she's at the Olympics.
Yeah, so
I don't know.
That's probably a bit PR spin, but yeah, it'd be good once we hear from her, I think, and just see how she's going because.
Do you find the community kind of comes in and defends people when there are trolls? Because I imagine your Swans community is really quite tight and huge. How many people? We
have a lot. So is there any Collingwood fans in the room here? One. So you'll probably hate me for saying saying this, but I'm only going by, and this is only by statistics, so don't come at me. So every year Roy Morgan do us a survey, and they send it to everyone, I guess, all around Australia. And for the last, I don't know since I've been there, it says that we have 1.2 million people that say that. And that is the most supported, according to Roy. He's looking at me like, don't, as if.
It's going to do some research.
Like Roy, but I'll explain it to you in a sec. So technically we go out every year, and it's a PR manager's dream, like most supported team. New South Wales is a big state, right? So if that survey goes out to everyone in New South Wales and it says, what football team do you support? They're going to click the Swans or the Giants, and a lot of people obviously probably would click the Swans because we've been around a lot longer than the Giants. But so that's where we get those kind of numbers going. So we're not silly that we know that Collingwood obviously have a lot of members and fans as well. But Sydney, it's really exciting. We've hit 75,000 members this year, which is incredible. It's our 150th year this year. And I remember being in our staff meeting last year because we had 65,000 last year, and it was like, okay, the next target's 75. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how are we going to get there? And we've got there. And I think it's really interesting for me, being from Tassie, being from a football state. I think I was probably a bit naive when I got the job at the Swans, thinking it would just be like going to a team in Melbourne. And those first few years are really hard in terms of, and you probably still hear the narrative now about how Sydney don't have proper fans, and because NRL is so dominant in Sydney. But we get the highest crowds in Sydney. We're the most followed team in Sydney. Obviously, it's diluted a bit through the NRL, but when we're getting 40,000 people every week at the SCG, it helps the teams winning, of course. That's all part of it. But I'd like to think between all the work that our commercial staff do, our football staff do, and the work that the team do on the field, it all leads to those little things. So we have, I don't even know, I think we just ticked over another 234,000 on Instagram, 156,000 on TikTok, which is something that's really exciting to me because I started the TikTok page. So that's really cool to tick over those milestones. But yeah, there is a lot of that, especially on, probably more so on platforms such as X, formerly known as Twitter. You get that real community feel, and that they're probably the people that are really the wide-on fans. And then TikTok's a bit more Gen Z millennial. Instagram's a bit of everything. But yeah, they do step to my defence and the club's defence sometimes, which is nice.
No, that's really good. Do they ever pile on the managers? Is it when it comes to who's at fault?
Yes.
Is it the player or is it the manager or is it the coach?
Well, yeah, I think a bit of every. I think everyone just likes to have their say, and it's funny though because you read the comments and you're like, well, that's not true. But then obviously I know things that other people don't know, and you can never comment that sort of stuff back. But there's a lot of I think it just comes with being a football fan though, right? As well, it's like you should. I think there's that line. Like you can be supportive, you can be really proud, or you can be angry, like all the emotions of a football fan. But I think it's the way how you convey them. And I think Twitter's probably a good example of, we have some really good fans that are just, if we have a bad game, it's okay, next week will be okay, this is what happened in this game, let's not get too upset about it, and trying to get the band together.
I love it. We've got time for another question, or maybe even two if we're quick. Yes.
Hi, I am an athlete at the TIS, so I experience a lot of, especially with going into a competition, you have a lot of, you try to stay off media. How do you manage around athletes and competition, especially if you're trying to get PR or, trying to question them maybe during training or get competition?
Yeah, so I guess it's probably something that you kind of just know when's the right time and when's not. So there is obviously, we don't ask players to do things for us, the night before the game, or unless it's something that on game day, there's obviously media as well. So there's kind of, broadcast interviews, but players wouldn't be doing radio interviews, or I wouldn't be asking them to do pieces to camera, formal things like that on a game day the night before a game. I think you kind of just know your windows. There'll be times where if you're away on the road with a player or whatever, and you might just need to get happy birthday message or something done for someone, a staff member, and if you're sitting there eating dinner with them, I'll kind of just grab you on the way out, things like that. I know our coaches are very they're very mindful of what the players read on social media, and I think it's been interesting with the Olympics and that as well, seeing so much TikTok action from the athletes versus the 2021 games, even just that how much content they're putting out. But I think it probably just does depend on the athlete. If that's something that if you want to be engaging in terms of social media in that kind of world, on that platform, because it's distracting you from being so nervous about an event or whatever, like, go for it. But I think probably the old school mindset as well is you don't want anything to trigger or upset anything that might affect performance. And performance is always number one with everything. Like, you're an elite athlete, that's their job. So I always just think, you don't want to push things too far. Like, I kind of just know when's the right time to do things, and there are kind of rules in place around things. Even with plays with rest days, like they get the 1 day off a week. It's like, you can't be asking them to do. And like, I've been there, like Isaac Heaney, one of our players, he's obviously one of the kind of pin-up boys and he's having one of the best seasons this year. And I've been with him because sometimes he's just really slow to reply to messages, and then other times he'll be really fast and he'll just call you sometimes. And I've been sitting next to him where his phone just doesn't stop. And I just had this moment where I was like, I get it, why he takes so long now. Like, I get it. Because it's not just like, I think sometimes as well, even when you're working footy, or any sport, you might think your request is the only thing that they're thinking of, but that's like point something of their day. Plus they've got, people like Isaac, a few other players, they have ventures outside of, like, they have their own brands for various things. They have managers annoying them about other deal things, and then they've probably got coaches asking them about. So yeah, sometimes you just think that they're players and they train and then they play PlayStation, but as someone that's around them all the time, they do have a very, like, trying to find 15 minutes to film something sometimes is really tricky. But I guess, yeah, to your question, I guess that's a personal thing. And I've coached junior hockey in that as well, and I know we've trialled like the phone bans at nationals, and I think sometimes if you take it away completely, that can backflip, because then they're just gonna try be rebellious, I guess. So I think it's just finding, if you want that time to scroll TikTok or whatever, if it takes away from the nerves and it's not going to affect your performance, like, you do you. I'm sure there's lots of different examples of the pros and cons.
And we've got one final question down the back.
Hi, I was just wondering if you had a job offer that was more exciting or a better paycheck from another team, would you have any trouble accepting that?
That's a tough question.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it's, yeah. It's a question that I actually get asked a lot, because obviously with the Tasmanian team coming in, and I'm from Tasmania. But I really like working at the Swans, and I think a lot of people as well, just like, people make the comment to me, oh, you're just waiting, like, before the Tassie team got announced, you're waiting for the Tassie team to come back in, like, and I'm like, this isn't a filler job. Like, I literally give my life to this football club, 6 days, 7 days a week, like, yeah. And I really like what I do there, and I never really saw myself being in Sydney. I kind of thought I'd probably be in Melbourne eventually, like, when I left Tassie. But I really do like Sydney, and the football club's a really great place to work. It does feel like what you're saying before, a bit like a family, and I think the relationships and that lure of a premiership, even though I'm not out there on the field, but everything you do, during the week, every little hour that you do overtime, every message you're sending, it all goes to the same thing, in wanting to win a premiership and being part of those moments. So I don't know, to answer your question. Like, I'm not someone that's, like, really driven by, like, massive titles and money. Like, I just like to enjoy what I do. But that said, I've done this for so long now that at some point, like, another job might lure me in. I'm not 100% sure. But what I do know is that I really like what I do at the moment. I have really good relationships there. I've worked my way up there, which is something that, and I'm not someone that's gone to lots of different places for jobs. I was at cricket for 7 years, was lucky enough to work in the UK as well over that time, which is something I really recommend to any students here as well, like, try and get out. And that was one of the best things I did going over there. It was just for 6 months, but loved it. Just a different perspective on things, showed you different ways of doing things, got you out of your comfort zone. It was the first time I'd ever travelled overseas. So you just got to do those things. But yeah, I'm really happy at the Swans and like doing what I'm doing, and I feel like I'm kind of a bit of a jack of all trades as well. So even though I work in media, like I work very closely with other departments and things like that. And because I've developed relationships with so many different externals and internals, I feel like I'm a kind of a important part of several different moving parts of the Swans. So that was a very PR answer, wasn't it?
That was great.
But honestly, I don't know.
All the key
How much
messages.
are you going to offer me?
Michelle, it's been such a pleasure. You are absolutely amazing. Can I just thank you on behalf of University of Tasmania for coming back and demonstrating what a fabulous education you got here, and thank you to your friends and family who've helped you along the way, because you've obviously, you know, you've had a lot of help to develop such a clear head, such a sound approach to life, and you're clearly a huge asset to the Swans. So they're very lucky to have you, and we're so lucky to have had you today here. So please join me in thanking Michelle.
Thank you.
Michelle, before you go, I'm going to get Shane to give you a little something on behalf of the university, just to say thank you for coming back to Tassie today. Thank you.
I was going to say thank you to Shane as well, who found me on LinkedIn. I've discovered a big Swans fan, and then messaged me, and then we just got chatting, and I'd said sometimes pop down to Hobart, so please let me know if anyone wants to hear from me. And yeah, if anyone in the room has any other questions and that, because I know it's hard to fit so many years in an hour. Like, just
Well, I think
DM
you're going to
me
have to
or
come
whatever.
back.
Oh, okay.
A lot.
Yeah, okay. My parents will be happy with that, because I don't get home that often these days, because football takes over your life. That's my tip if you want to give up your life work in sport. No,
You're
but
making
it's
it look pretty.
Yeah.
You're making it look pretty good.
The bags are being covered up, but no. Well, I'm straight on a plane tomorrow to meet up with the team for the game over there. So it doesn't stop, but it's all part of it. It's not lost on me. Like, it often takes people on TikTok comment, "Oh, you have such a cool job." Yeah, I do have a cool job, I guess. It's pretty cool, but yeah, it's a lot of work at the same time. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you.
Open my little gift. Merch? I love merch. You love merch. If it's not red.